Hello and welcome to the Test of Time. Thanks for joining us. Today's guest is Gareth Batty, and we go all the way back to 2004. Fourth Test match in Antigua, England versus the West Indies. And this will arguably go down as the innings of all time. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Keeper Harmison gets his reward. Been a brilliant spell of bowling. Harmison bowled a superb opening spell.
5 wickets for Stephen Harmison. Stephen Harmison take a bow.
Well, Bats, thanks for joining us on the Test of Time. We go all the way back to 2004. England are winning 3-0. The series has gone unbelievably well for Michael Vaughan and a group of fast bowlers that have blown the West Indies away. On the eve of the Antigua Test match, two things happened. England dropped Chris Reed, somebody you were close to, and brought in Geraint Jones. And Ashley Giles pulls out on, I think, the day before the game, and in comes Gareth Batty. What do you remember about the lead-up to that Antigua Test match?
It was all strange. I never expected to play for one. I don't think anybody expected Reedy to be left out either. We'd heard rumours that you were very aware of, and the big men were very aware it was going to be a flat pitch for their last one. They didn't want to get done 4-0. And then, got the old knock on the door. Gilo's gone in the calf. Tactical, I reckon. He realised it was going to be flat as your hat. So we'll leave it to a young whippersnapper. But I'd had minimal cricket because the nets were all on the grounds. So once the game started, and pre-games, it was basically getting you guys all ready, the guys that had played the 3 games leading up, ready to play in Test matches. So I felt a little bit undercooked. It's just one of those nice calls, isn't it? You told you're going to represent your country. It's cool in the game.
It is, and we go into the build-up. I'll never forget. I think it was Andy Roberts, who was the groundsman, and Beefy's waved me over, who was doing a pitch report, and he's waved over. I've gone over to meet Andy Roberts. He's introduced me. Army, this is Andy. Andy Roberts. I was taken back by it a little bit. One of the great fast bowlers and he said to me, "Congratulations, young man. I think he's bowled brilliantly on this trip." And he said, "You will not win 4-0. And I was like, "Oh, another one, not another West Indian who thinks." I says, "Where's your batters been for the last sort of 5 weeks? What makes you think that we are not going to win 4-0 on this surface?" He went, "I'm the groundsman." And my heart sank. My heart absolutely sank. And Lara wins a toss. Decides to bat first after contemplating not. He said afterwards he was thinking of bowling first. And I do remember running in and he's nicked it. I thought he'd nicked it first up. Bang, there you go. Brian Lara caught behind. Not given Darrell Hare. And that was on note. And the next 2.5 days was long and it was very boring watching Brian bat. But you come on to bowl, what's your initial thoughts when you come on to bowl, bowling at one of the greatest players of all time against spin?
I remember stood at point, actually, your first ball to Brian, nicked him, and I'm shouting, I'm going, "Yeah, get in there!" I'm thinking, brilliant, we got him. It was the one guy I was genuinely worried about, not giving out. I suppose when I'm a bit older, I might have actually thought, hang on a minute, there's somebody trying to tell me something here. But no, coming on to bowl, felt relatively good because I got the wicket the night before. But I remember Vaughan saying, "Look, we're getting out there, lads, because we want to win 4-0. I remember chasing a ball out to the boundary before I came onto the ball, and the back of my whites were splashes with all the water and the mud coming up. So it was kind of like that getting down and dirty type situation, which normally I would have been all right in, but against the best of the best, it just felt like he was playing with me. It was like a cat playing with a mouse, and he just flicked me around and smacked me out of the ground, then block a few back for 10 balls, and then when he wanted to hit a boundary, he just did. He probably wasn't as savage on me as he was with a couple of the other fellas, because I think he could hit me out of the ground when he wanted. I think the other fellas, it was kind of like, I've got to go a bit harder at them. But it was certainly a bit of an eye-opener.
It was, and I remember he just didn't look like scoring a run for 5 weeks. And when he nicked it, I've gone and celebrated as even though he hadn't scored a run for 5 weeks, as though it was like this is my moment sort of thing. I'm I'm on his ground because he's already broke the world record on here. And when Daryl Hare didn't give him out, I remember having a little bit of a go at Daryl because it's not many times I have a go at umpires, but I remember having a go at Daryl because I probably knew in the back of my mind what was going to happen. I think Daryl got me back because he warned me twice during that next year, and he warned me off. But the atmosphere of the England fans during them first couple of days, even though Lara was spanking it everywhere, was unbelievable.
Yeah, and they keep you going, don't they? When it's it's tough times. Lara. I remember. I think it was when he was about 300. He nicked one. Obviously, I didn't have a slip at that point. I don't think. And it went through. And I thought, it still felt like something was going to happen because the fans kept you buoyed the whole time, even though it felt like we'd fielded for the best part of a week. They still give you that extra bit of energy, and you know that you've got the support. I don't think once you'd nicked him off first ball, I don't think we beat the bat until he got 300. He just hit the middle of the bat for just every ball.
I always, when I get asked about that innings, we were in the game for 4 overs every time we got a new ball. We had 3 new balls, and I thought we were in the game. We looked quite dangerous for 4 overs, and then once he got going again, that was it.
Lara was just sort of either playing his keyboard at the other end, just caressing them through the infield, or just sat with a bat at the non-strikers watching everything just unfold quite nicely from his point of view. It was just kind of like perfect.
And he took Huggy on, didn't he? We had a bowling attack, a seam bowling attack of probably 3 lads who would attack you, and then if it swung, Huggy was in the attack. But then when the ball went a bit quiet and the game went a bit quiet, it took Huggy the ball one side of the wicket, Phil one side. But then Brian started teasing with him, didn't he? Hit him through mid-wicket, he run down a wicket and plant him over extra cover, and then Ridley came in. And anything that Huggy sort of pitched up, he just kept spanking him out of the ground. He played and missed it. I remember he hit me one for 1-6, and the wicket was flat, and he played and missed it about 2 or 3 in a row. And then there was one just that little bit fuller. And then nowadays on TV, on Sky, you'll see us like in the slot. And it went out the ground, and I was like, where the fuck does that come from? Do you know what I mean? So it was. I found it one of the funniest games I've ever played in. It was one of the most enjoyable games because obviously, you play an iconic game and Brian breaks a record. But it was so frustrating in a way that when you thought you were in the game and building up pressure, their way of getting out was just typical West Indian. Right, I'm going to dong you out the park now. And during that game, they did. Yeah,
I remember at the end of when we finally got off the field, I remember thinking, blimey neck, what? I was angry more than anything that he'd broken the record, and I was part of the bowling attack and so on and so forth. Brian had got 100 off me, off his own bat, and I think the rest of the team had only got like 42 runs off me. And obviously I'd gone for 160 or whatever it was. But I remember thinking, wow, we almost had the game in so many periods where we had them, where we thought we were going to get them out, but everything just, the rub of the green went, and it was all sort of backed up to Brian being able to have the time to get the 400.
But during that time you're bowling at Brian, where was Vaughan in this situation? Because we've done a few of these shows now, and Vaughan's been talked about as this genius captain, and he was. But there's sometimes as a captain, and you know yourself because you're captain for a long period of time, there's things that are just totally out of your control.
Yeah, I don't think there's a lot you can do. I mean, it was pretty sort of jovial throughout the whole thing. He was never particularly tense about it. I was tense because I think he got his 100th run, his 200th run, and his 300th all off me. And I'm thinking, this is a wind-up now. This bloke's just getting milestones off me. And I remember getting the 400. He swept one off me, and Thorpe was at 45. And it would have hit him on his right shoe had he have just stepped to the right, but he went to the left. And I was like, Thorpe, any danger? And I'm swearing at the ground as he gets his 400. But all the way through, I remember Vaughan just being like, don't realise you get him out this ball, or let's do this, or let's do that. He had me bowling over the wicket for a period which I'd never even really practised because I was only sort of 2 or 3 years in my infancy as first class cricket, but he was always sort of pretty chilled with it. It was like, let's try it, what are we going to lose? And he came on and bowled a few himself and got whacked out of the ground, and he said, nah, you're going to have to bowl here, I'm not good enough for this. And I was like, I'm not sure I am, I keep getting smacked out of the ground, but it was taking 3 or 4 balls more maybe to smack me out of the ground than him. But yeah, I mean, you couldn't really there was no real tactics at that point. The ball wasn't really doing a lot from my perspective, not that it ever does, but he kept it quite. It was like we were just chatting as mates, as you would do in a park playing a bit of cricket, which takes a bit of pressure off. It takes that little bit of. It's only after the event then I thought, you really are bad. The bloke's just got millions off you, and you've had a really bad day at the office. But at the time, I didn't really feel like it was that bad a day at the office, and I think that's the skill of the captaincy, probably to an extent.
But you mentioned about at the end of day 2, talking about reading papers and stuff like that. The record was definitely on then. Can you remember going on to the morning of day 3? We're ready for the third new ball, trying to get to the third new ball, I think it was. And we are now in a position where you are the spinner. We've been 160 overs in the field. You're going to have to keep bowling from one end while we'll rotate, and you end up bowling 50 overs, 52 overs. But that the morning and the anticipation that something special might happen here.
Yeah, I'm a bit old school. I always looked at economy and that sort of thing, which maybe in the modern era I would have looked more at wickets and economy be secondly. But the era that I grew up in, it was hold the economy, and going into third day of my economy, I was still going at like 2.5 threes pretty well, and it was only Brian that was really taking me. And you knew when he was coming, because the first ball of the over he'd run down again, and he literally ran at every ball with an intent to smack me out of the ground until he did, and then he just got a single and got off strike or blocked a few, and you knew when he wanted his boundary. And it was how you could sort of stop that, and because the pitch was so flat, you couldn't get any sort of bounce off it. There was no real sort of side movement, and there was an air of inevitability that he was going to get the record off me, probably, because I was going to bowl the most overs. So I'm not a stupid man. I kind of got that there's a pretty good chance. Plus, he was probably less fearful of my bowling than anybody else. I just didn't want to be that man that he got those runs off, because I don't have much of an ego, but what little ego I've got, I didn't want it to be me, because I didn't want that to be the history. I didn't want to be the guy sat in the pub in the Red Lion on a Friday night when I'm 55 and that be a pub question.
Batty to Lara. There goes the sweep. There it is. Perhaps the most significant single ever in the history of Test match cricket. Brian Charles Lara becomes the first man in the history of the game to register a score of 400.
And then Brian gets the record. The record that it was. When I look back at it now, I just think, that's a great record. He got 400. He went past 385 against the side who were probably the best side in the world at the time, and that bowling attack. Gone past Hayden, who had 385 against Zimbabwe. So we all joke when you play against the universities sometimes that you don't want your CB against the universities. And for Lara to get it against, even though it was on a flat pitch, to get it against that bowling attack that England had at the time was something special. And Gary Sobers comes on and we all congratulate him.
Yeah, and that's the difficult one for me, because I'm a bit of a purist of the game. So the game stopping and champagne coming on and all that, I was a bit like, look, I realise something amazing's just happened, but this just isn't cricket. It don't feel right here. This bloke's like having his cake and eating it. He's already whacked us all over, and now he's having champagne on the pitch. I'm like, okay, enough's enough here. I'm the fist is starting to go. I'm like, look, just come on, get on with it. You're rubbing salt in the wound a little bit too much, but when Sir Gary came on, to be fair, it's a pretty cool thing, and it was the only cool thing about the whole event for me, because as I say, he's the greatest all-rounder for me, and he's got a bit of an aura about him, hasn't he, when he came on, and the way that Brian was with him, Brian was like in awe of him as well. It was very surreal, that sort of. It was about 15 minutes, wasn't it, that whole chaos, and I was a bit. It took me 5 minutes to stop swearing at Thorpe because he didn't dive on it or move, and unfortunately, what I didn't know that evening, I spoke to my mum on the phone. She told me off for swearing on TV because I was going effing this and whatever, because Thorpe didn't stop the ball, and I didn't want to be that man where he got it off me. And it just sort of dragged out that whole 15 minutes. It's probably 15 minutes of my life I'm quite happy to forget.
And he raises his bat, Sobers comes on, and then he has the nerve to walk off as well about 2 minutes later. So he milked it, had his cake in it, as you say, milked it for a bit, faced the ball and walked off. And it was an unbelievable atmosphere. The side that England had out at that time, I just want your take on that side, because that side was, we talk about how great the 2005 Ashes side was, but I also said it was built with some very, very good senior players leading us in a direction that we needed to go down. And you look at that side, you mentioned Thorpe had just got for me, it was the best 100 I've ever been involved in. Thorpe's 100 in Barbados. You had Butch, our middle order was very, very experienced. It was Butcher, Hussein, Thorpe. So you'll talk about the team of 2005, but this team was built off a good foundation and a real good upbringing with them senior players in that group.
Yeah, I totally agree. In some ways, I feel I'm very fortunate because I've done all the travelling around at different places. We started in Sri Lanka, then Bangladesh, and then South Africa, the West Indies and all this leading up to 2005. And exactly what you're talking about. It was the initial stages were built around those senior players. And then the likes of yourself, I could see you and Fred. It was around about that end of or early 2003. You could see that you were both really concentrating on getting super fit. And it was almost like, right, I'm going to get to my point, so I'm at my absolute peak when we take on Australia in 2005. It was almost like everything had been built up towards that. And I suppose that game, the only person who made it not the best team in the world was me playing, because Gilo complimented you guys beautifully. But the fact there was a Thorpe around, an absolute legend of the game and student of the game, a wonderful expert player, and then Nasser had that extra bit of grit and determination and professionalism that rubbed off on other players, and possibly yourself and Fred, you guys could expand on that. It allowed, you could see Jonesy just evolving a little bit, and he was keeping Jimmy out of the team. There's a few of us who were quite tight, that bunch, with Reedy in there and Geraint. It was all sort of jostling for a spot and so on and so forth. You could see it, the whole thing was just working really, really well. And I suppose it goes back to the Vaughan thing, that his kind of chilled environment, as opposed to a very on-you environment that Nasser had created, was kind of at the right time as well, because I don't think you'd have got to that point had it been the other way around. I think it needed that sort of hard taskman at the front end of it all, of the journey, to then lead into that sort of take the soft edge off and go for him, absolutely go for the throat in 2005, which you'd all kind of, it was a beautiful thing to see. You'd all kind of just gone, bang, this is me. It was your Martin McCutcheon. You were proper in your moment. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah. And go back to the Test match. We struggled as we would. We just, what did we field? We fielded, what did we? I can't remember what it was. Fielding 202 overs in the field, and we go out, and at the end of it was hot as well. 751 for 5. Lara's had his milk moment and walked off, and he's it was a great atmosphere. And we struggled at the start. We were 94. I think we were 90 for 5 overnight. Come in day 4, and I remember Fred going out to bat. I think he was 30 odd not out, and he was so determined. I've never seen Andrew as determined as though he was. He was he was going to get a score on this sort of surface. And we ended up following on. And I think, I'm missing this bit out of it, because Andrew Flintoff got a fantastic 100, and you grew up with Fred as well. He wanted to open the baton. I remember him coming in the dressing room, and he wanted to open the baton, didn't he? He came in, I'm going in now. He just literally wanted to go straight back out and open. And it was fortunate that we did sort of drag him to not go back in, and it wasn't the right thing for Fred to go and open the baton.
Yeah, I think it would have been shattered, because he'd done all that time on his feet bowling, and he would have bowled well into the 30 overs. And it was hot. And then on your feet again for that innings, and he batted pretty much the whole innings, because we'd lost wickets early and so on and so forth. To then go out again, I think it would have been almost a step too far with the break, and then go back again. I think it would have been physically just a bit too, well, probably mentally as well, just a fraction too demanding on the great man.
Best got Collins got Vaughan out, caught behind. Then Trez got out of Tino. Butch got bowled, and Best bowled Nasser with a quick delivery. And Fred's in. All of a sudden, Fred's in. Well, he's inside the first 18 overs. So, they're bowled nicely. And then we come back out. And when we come back out to bat, it was like the real England have come back out. Vaughan and Trescothick have had, 70 overs with their boots up to try and get over the 2.5 days in the field. And 182 for 1, first partnership. Trez gets out for 80. And Vaughan gets a magnificent 100.
Second innings was pretty good, how we went about our business, and it was probably finishing the series as it should have been. I don't think it would have been fitting for the way that we played the first 3 Test matches to finish with getting sort of beaten in that manner. So it was good to hold on and keep that sort of feel-good factor around the group. And it wasn't really dented from that moment. I didn't feel from you guys sort of walking away from it. I didn't feel like anybody was particularly scarred from it.
I agree. When you look back at the way that Test match was, I thought it was a great occasion. Antigua's a great place to play. The old St John's ground is just a ridiculous ground to play on when they're hanging from the rafters. And I can't remember his name now. The great big beard. He's got his pads on. He's full white. Even got the great big cricket jumper in the 40 degrees heat. It's just a magnificent experience to play on that ground. And that's the record I'll take away. Yes, was brilliant, the flat pitch and stuff like that. But I thought the atmosphere was the one that shone out most of all 4 grounds. Our families were there as well, which obviously helps us. But I thought the atmosphere was amazing.
Yeah, it was. Do you know what? Personally, it would have been great right at the end of my career, not at the start of my career when I was trying to forge something, because it stunted, if not finished, very quickly for me. But to have been around that sort of, to actually have played in that environment, that's how cricket should be. It was, people loving the game. Didn't matter what side you were on. If you did something good, they were all over it. And there's the shells and what have you, all the horns going around.
I just thought that tour was an unbelievable experience for a lot of us. I thought it was an unbelievable set of blokes who were forging a path on their career. And you mentioned one name in there who couldn't get in. He couldn't get into that side, but he was developing into. I think he was transforming. He's transforming, and somebody you knew well, in James Anderson. He was transforming his bowling action and his skills. He was unbelievable in white ball cricket, and his time was coming that he was going to get and move through to be. I couldn't comprehend him getting 600 Test match wickets, but you could see there was talent in there. We had a pool of blokes that I thought were as good a squad that England have ever had at that time. And to cap it off at the end of the Test match, doing a lap of honour with all the England supporters in a Barmy Army with a Wisden Trophy, is something I will never ever forget. And I know you from a Test match point of view, about 52 overs went for 160, but you must have thought, wow, this is unbelievable.
Oh, and particularly from where I'd come from during that trip. The Caribbean at that time, the facilities weren't amazing if you weren't playing the game. You weren't getting extra practice time. It wasn't like you could go off into the nets during the 5 days to get your skills honed if you were lucky enough to get a game. And obviously, had Jado not have got injured, I wouldn't have got a game. So from that point of view, semi-frustrating that you couldn't fully work on your skills. So you're getting all this information from everybody, seeing everybody and watching it from both sides. Amazing, because it was a great learning sort of tour in a lot of ways.
Somebody went out for a rock star trip as well, wasn't there?
Yeah. We had dinner with we had dinner and a night with one of the greatest rock stars ever, Mick Jagger. We were told, Fletch told me, Jimmy, Collie, and some Reedy, I think it might have been. No, it was Geraint. We got to go and meet him in Trinidad, and have a few drinks with him, which was like, I'm apologising for saying this because I knew the name, but I didn't know what it looked like and stuff, because I wasn't really I wasn't really into my music as such. And I remember saying it to a mate. He's like, "What, Mick Jagger? You having a giraffe?" It's like, I absolutely had my badge for it. But yeah, it was just one of those brilliant trips. It had everything. There was a little bit of off-field good stuff, brilliant stuff on-field. And it's certainly one I'll never forget. It was as a youngster growing up watching the West Indies, they were my team. I was like, whoa. Your Viv Richards and Ambrose and Walsh and all these, but God, Greenwich and Haynes. It was like, and plus all the lads who probably weren't their superstars but played county cricket. I remember watching Patrick Patterson with his knees. The whole thing, the Caribbean West Indies cricket for me growing up was like the thing. They were just brilliant. So to win there and be part of that group, and you could definitely feel, that was the one thing I remember on the flight home. There's something very special happening here with this group of lads.
It was an unbelievable tour. It was a great experience, one that I will never forget, and I just want to thank you, Bats, for your time in explaining what a wonderful Test match it was, because we didn't win the Test match, We made some great memories in winning that series.
The bit you're missing, Steve, you went to number 1 in the world then. That 7 for 12.
Yeah.
I'll never forget those 8 blokes in the slip cord. And that was, for everybody on that trip, whether you got 100, whether you got whatever, everybody will remember it for that. Because everybody was right behind you, getting to number 1 and being the man that you are now. It was a wonderful trip, it really was.
Thanks very much, Bats. We got it started in Jamaica and we did have a good time on Rod's boat, ending it in
I've got
Antigua.
cheeks to prove it
Thanks
still.
so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, well, Pat.